Are Africa's legal systems truly fair, or do they tilt in favor of those with wealth and influence? Let's explore whether the law really serves justice for all or just those with deep pockets. The question on everyone's mind is, does the law truly serve justice, or does it bend to favor those with deep pockets? In this video, we are going to explore whether the wealthy have an unfair advantage when it comes to the legal system in Africa. Access to justice is a fundamental human right. Yet, in many African countries, it's a luxury only the wealthy can afford. The cost of legal representation, court fees, and other expenses can be prohibitively high, making it difficult for low-income individuals to seek legal recourse. This creates a system where those with economic means have a significant advantage in terms of legal representation and access to resources. As a result, the wealthy tend to have a greater chance of securing favorable legal outcomes, while the poor are often left to rely on overburdened and under-resourced public defenders.
Elizabeth Warren, okay, the American justice system is rigged in favor of the rich. Those are her words. She's been obviously studying this for many years, has been one of the few people in the Beltway that has enough courage to actually stand up to wealthy Wall Street and wealthy in general. But she's looked at this and she drew some obvious parallels. The CEO, Don Blankenship, who I've had direct involvement with there in West Virginia, kills a bunch of coal miners, and you slap on the hand, murdered. Basically, it's just nothing but projected murder. But the jury comes back and says, no, we're going to let you go. Judge lets him go with a 3-month sentence. What is your take on what her criticism is?
I think it's absolutely spot on. I mean, as you just pointed out, Don Blankenship spent less than 3 days in prison per person killed. And he was convicted. I mean, there was enough evidence to show that his willing negligence caused the deaths of 29 people. And so he gets a slap on the hand. And then meanwhile, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, these people get murdered for no reason. And
furthermore, economic status can also influence the legal system in more subtle ways. For instance, wealthy individuals may have better connections and networks that allow them to influence the legal process. They may have friends or acquaintances who are judges, lawyers, or high-ranking government officials, giving them an inside track on the legal system. This can lead to favorable treatment and biased decisions that perpetuate inequality. Additionally, the legal system in Africa often prioritizes cases involving high-profile individuals or companies, leaving ordinary citizens to wait for extended periods of time for their cases to be heard. This creates a situation where justice is delayed and in some cases denied. The wealthy, on the other hand, can afford to expedite their legal process, ensuring that their cases are heard quickly and efficiently. In some instances, the legal system can even be used as a tool of oppression against the poor and marginalized. For example, laws may be selectively enforced to target specific groups or individuals, or the legal system may be manipulated to silence dissenting voices. This further entrenches inequality and perpetuates the notion that the law favors the rich. In South Africa, for instance, the case of Oscar Pistorius, a wealthy former athlete, highlighted the disparities in the legal system. Pistorius was convicted of murdering his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, but his wealth and influence allowed him to secure a relatively lenient sentence. In contrast, poor and marginalized communities often face harsher penalties for similar crimes. In Nigeria, the case of James Ibori, a former governor, illustrates how wealth and political connections can influence the legal system. Ibori was accused of embezzling millions of dollars in public funds, but his wealth and connections allow him to secure a plea deal that minimized his punishment. In Kenya, the case of Chris Kirubi, a wealthy businessman, highlights how the legal system can be used to silence dissenting voices. Kirubi used the legal system to target journalists and whistleblowers who accused him of corruption, illustrating how the wealthy can use the law to intimidate and silence their critics. But what about ordinary people who don't have the same resources and connections as the wealthy? How do they fare in the legal system? One such case is that of Amara, a young woman from low-income community in Lagos, Nigeria. Amara's brother was wrongly accused of theft and was brutally beaten by the police. Despite the lack of evidence, Amara's brother was still charged and held in prison for months. Amara's family couldn't afford a lawyer, and she was forced to rely on an overworked and under-resourced public defender. Eventually, Amara's brother was acquitted, but not before the family had spent months in agony, struggling to make ends meet. Amara's story is a testament to the stark contrast between the experiences of the rich and the poor within the legal system. While the wealthy can afford lawyers and connections that secure them favorable outcome, the poor are often left to navigate a complex and biased system.
As a columnist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Tony Messenger has spent years in county and municipal courthouses documenting how poor Americans are convicted of minor crimes and then saddled with exorbitant fines and fees. In his new book, Profit and Punishment: How America Criminalizes the Poor in the Name of Justice, Messenger exposes the cruelty and tragedy of modern-day debtors' prisons and how they destroy the lives of vulnerable Americans swept up in a system designed to penalize the most impoverished. Tony Messenger joins us now to expand. Welcome to Rising, Tony.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
And Tony, I've always thought that if people were forced to spend even just a couple hours, let alone days, weeks, months, years, in courtrooms watching these petty crimes being enforced on impoverished people, that they would be appalled at what was going on. People going away for such extreme amounts of time, often not even convicted of a crime, just because they can't make a very small amount of bail, and we would get much swifter change. But it happens in a place that's removed from a lot of our public consciousness. How did you get into that courtroom? What was it? When did you start working as a court reporter, and when did it start to dawn on you that there was something abhorrent going on?
Well, it was really just the last few years. In some cases, I was introduced to this concept, like much of the rest of the nation, after Ferguson, when we saw nightly protests. And those were very much related to police brutality. But underlying those protests was a situation where a lot of young black people in St. Louis County were regularly arrested by local municipalities. And it turns out that a lot of those local municipalities that had their own courts and their own police departments were using those police departments to collect money because they had broken city budgets. And this is a problem that's all over the nation, and it affects black people, it affects Hispanics, it affects white people in rural Missouri and rural Oklahoma, where you have cities and counties that are trying to use the court system to raise money. And what that means is a lot of people who are charged with very minor offenses, even after they've served time for their offenses, end up going back to jail primarily because they're poor, because they can't afford to pay the fines or the fees that are imposed upon them, or in the case of some of the people that I've written about, a bill that they get for jail time. And then they can't afford that bill for jail time, just like a hotel bill, and they end up being put back in jail, literally a debtor's prison, simply because they're poor.
In conclusion, the evidence suggests that the legal system in Africa does indeed favor the rich. However, It's not a hopeless situation. By acknowledging and addressing these biases, we can work towards creating a more just and equitable legal system that serves everyone, regardless of their economic status. Thanks for watching. And if you have any thoughts on this topic, please share them in the comments below. If you want to learn more about related topics, I've got a video on the connection between politics and the legal system in Africa that is definitely worth checking out.